host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teal. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teal, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining Caregiver Solutions Info Show today. I'm so happy that you could. We are live from Boca Raton, Florida. This show is for caregivers, especially caregivers that care for someone that has some form of dementia. Caregiving is obviously something that people don't learn how to do. It's not something you go to school for. So this show was created to be an additional resource for family caregivers to help you along your journey of caregiving, because it is a very, very difficult job, although it can be very, very rewarding. So I'm glad that you're here joining us either on local Southeast Florida radio, or maybe you're joining us on your iPhone or your smartphone or tablet or computer at the website caregiversolutions.info. Today we're going to be talking about advocacy. You may not really understand that in the sense of being a caregiver. And so we're going to be talking a lot about advocacy, what that means, why it's important, and not only advocating for your loved one, but to learn that other people can advocate and are advocating for you, the family caregiver. So here today, I'm very happy to have Mary Barnes. She's the president, CEO, and founder of Alzheimer's Community Care in West Palm Beach, Florida. So welcome, Mary.
Welcome. Good afternoon. It's a beautiful day down here in paradise.
That's true. It really is. I'm so glad you're here. You know, it's always a pleasure to have you here with us. You've been here a couple times over the last few years, and some of your staff have been here, and your organization is wonderful. You know, I'm really proud to have a relationship and a partnership with Alzheimer's Community Care, and glad that you're here today to talk about advocacy.
Well, thank you for asking me, and it's been a long, long partnership. This is not something that just happened overnight, you know.
It's probably about 18 years now.
I would say for our relationship, I started in the work of Alzheimer's back in 1985, when a lot of people didn't even know how to say the name, much less spell it.
You're right.
So it's come a long way, the whole movement.
It has come a long way, and a lot of that is attributed to you and your organization. Before we get into the advocacy part, though, speaking of the organization, why don't you tell everybody how Alzheimer's Community Care evolved? How did it start? Because you're the founder. What made you want to start this organization?
Well, I didn't do it alone. There were some very, very successful business men and women who actually were taking care of somebody with Alzheimer's. That was even harder in those days because of the fact there was so little information out there about how Alzheimer's affects, how it progresses. Is it mental illness? It was related to that.
Is it just old age?
And old age. I mean, there was a time in medical school back in 1906 when Professor Elias Alzheimer's recognized a brain tissue that was about a patient that was 58 years old, or 56 years old, I should say. And the conclusion was that if you were under 65, and this is what they taught in medical school at that time, if you were under 65, you had Alzheimer's. If you were over 65, you had senility. you were confused and old. So that was that way for years.
Back in 1906.
1906.
We've come a
until-
long way, baby.
And yes, and then there became another movement in the early 1980s, and this is when it became recognized that it was a disease process. Now, of course, they call it a neurocognitive disorder, which is different from neurodegenerative disorder. So being able to recognize the cognition issues was a big medical breakthrough.
So you knew some business people that
Yep.
were caregivers
Yes.
at that time. And why was it important to you to try to help them or try to get education out there?
Well, we all started talking. I was working in the field of with the elderly. I've never worked in any other field. I've been in geriatrics all my career. And so talking about how they were frustrated because they didn't seem to be able to get any help from the medical community. There was talking to doctors, sharing what was going on. They really didn't know. And so as we got more into it and as we started talking, they wanted an organization that was going to meet their needs, them as caregivers. So what would that be? That would be support groups. Mm-hmm. That would be specialized attention and care, which we now at that time we called family consultant, but now it's the family nurse consultant role. And then what emerged out of that created a very unique concept, which is Alzheimer's daycare. What was that all about? And so there
These
was
were
a
all
lot
new
of research.
ideas.
These were all new ideas. And so there was a very philanthropic gentleman who said, I want to start an organization. Would you come and work for that organization? And it would be the kind of services that you would be able to feel is important and develop that. And let's call it Alzheimer's Community Care.
Because
He named it.
He named it.
He named
It's a great
it.
name because it
is.
tells you exactly what it is all about.
Exactly. It says it. And that's what they wanted to make sure it was clear.
And how many years ago did it
That
start?
was back in 1996.
Wow. Okay.
And so Mr. Baxter went ahead and built a building that has 4 charities in it. We have, as an organization, the whole first floor. And we stay there for rent for $1 a year. Now it's $10 a year. Had to go up.
Inflation,
because
you know.
Yes, inflation. But anyway, it was a remarkable miracle because that's what it was, to give us the strength and give us the capacity and give us the ability to have all our monies go for services and resources, because 92 cents, we are a nonprofit, 92 cents for every dollar we make goes into services and resources.
to give you all those tools that you need
Exactly.
to do the work.
Exactly.
I mean, not just the building, but all the resources, because it's something that takes a lot of money and manpower.
And so when we started actually evolving the concept of what neurocognitive disorder was and what kind of care specialization that our patients and our caregivers needed, then having funding coming from different areas like local, we do fundraising, and also having local organizations and local communities also raising money, then we turned to Tallahassee. And-
So this is where the bigger money comes from, right? As
Right.
far as like grants and funding from the state to you as a nonprofit organization.
We do have other monies that come from other private donations and private foundations. But yes, the real impact that we were able to do and make is because of what, at that time, there was a concept called the Alzheimer's Disease Initiative. And that was done back in 1986. And there was a very unique partnership that was going on up in Tallahassee because there was no Department of Elder Affairs at the time. And so there was an advocate. Her name was Margaret Lynn Duggar. And she was really the mother. I have to give her credit because she was the mother of knowing about the ADI. And it was before the Department of Elder Affairs was put together, was HRS, okay, Human Resources Services. That was done by the state. Of course, that's evolved into Children Family Services. This is what they call now, but it's all under. And then we have now the Department of Elder Affairs. And of course, they also oversee the ADI, and the dollars do come out of the legislature. But we, as what our caregivers wanted, was have a local organization that walked the walk. There comes a point, there's a lot of talk the talk, Everybody needs to watch over the caregiver. Everybody needs to do specialized care for the caregiver. But how do you do it? What is the genesis of how and meet those needs? And so this is where we came into being, is formulating these innovative approaches.
Boots on the ground.
Boots on the ground. We are where the rubber meets the road. And, there is no cookie cutter here because, as you know, every family is different. Mm-hmm. And now in the medical community, and in research, they've identified a lot other types of neurocognitive disorders like Lewy bodies, like vascular dementia, like frontal temp lobe, and
There's so many.
Well, there's getting to be more, and it helps us out as providers, the specialized Alzheimer's provider, because we need to know what the pathology is of that disease process.
And
it's
each
not all
one
the
has,
same.
Right, and each one has its own little idiosyncrasies, so to
Yes.
speak, and the way that you're relating to the person because of how the particular disease exhibits itself and the symptoms of that. So a lot of information to not only teach the professional caregivers, but also the family caregivers.
There's been some courageous professionals like yourself and like us trying to identify how do we meet those unique needs and how to put it into some sort of practice on a routine basis that actually becomes, how shall I say, defined in the books, which they're just starting to write now.
Well, thank you, Mary, for that. I don't feel that it's necessarily brave, although I appreciate that. I think it comes from passion, and you certainly have that passion. And I think that the people that are really giving of themselves, their time, their money, their resources, their energy, it's a passion they have for one reason or another to help people with Alzheimer's and other related dementias and their families. And I want to thank you because you do have that passion, and you are the brave one to kind of cut this trail, so to speak, because you're the first to have this type of organization that's local to our area. I mean, certainly we have the Alzheimer's Association. It's a national organization. We have a chapter here in South Florida. But there aren't many organizations, if any, that are like Alzheimer's Community Care in other parts of the country.
Well, and that's just like our legislation that we developed as an advocacy. One of the things that when we started as an organization, and a lot of our caregivers, and the safety and security is major with our both Alzheimer's patients and caregivers. The wandering, having people be arrested because they shoplift and forgot that they had put a bottle of aspirin in their pocket, and other misunderstandings, loitering, other kinds of expedition, some sexual, because of the disease process, could be misinterpreted, and police did not understand.
Because police,
didn't
understand, but they see someone acting strangely or doing something wrong, and that person could present to an uneducated, even a police officer, to either be on drugs, be maybe drunk.
Because they had nothing to compare it to.
Right.
There was no information, no training, no anything. Mm-hmm. So the first thing we did as an organization is to, down here in Palm Beach County, we got a grant, and we did a search and rescue project with local law enforcement. And it put all the agencies together, and we did this training, developed a training, and we developed a publicity agenda, and we were on television and all the chiefs, and it was a miracle, actually, watching everybody, because they cared. They knew that something was wrong. They knew that they weren't handling this the way they should, and everybody realized there was education. So that was a work in progress, and we put together a little type of bracelet program that was just some links and a name
ID locator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was very very unsophisticated, so to speak. Okay, but it was a success, and it had a way of helping families feel safer. What evolved into that was there was a concept called the Silver Alert, and it was going on in Texas, and it was going on in Oklahoma, and there were a few states that were really looking at doing a Silver Alert. Wow. Okay, I attended an ADI advisory council meeting up there in Orlando, and talking to the secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs at the time, and I volunteered to do the research on what would a silver alert look like in Florida. So I called Texas. I talked to legislators there. I called Chicago, Illinois, because they had done some recent legislation. I talked to Oklahoma, and they had done something in legislation. But they all had a common complaint that they really couldn't get the program going, the service going, because nobody wanted to be in charge. Or if they brought the person back to their home, what was the follow-up? What was the follow-through? Who would do that?
So they were missing some
So
pieces.
they were missing piece. And so I came back with a recommendation. I came back for the legislation and we did do the legislation, as it turned out, as an organization. That was our advocacy.
which we're going to talk about in a few minutes.
And we did come up with the Silver Alert legislation. And it passed through the House and the Senate. Everybody agreed with it. Everybody thought you talk about politics, and sometimes there's always someone or something that's going to talk against it. Nobody did. That was a miracle all in itself. And that told me that there's a lot of work that has to be done, because if you get the right information, if you come up with the right legislation or right project that makes sense, people will support it.
Yep, and you certainly have lots of support. So we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to find out just how much support Mary has drummed up for Alzheimer's community care and what it means to the community at large. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teal, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Welcome back. My special guest today is Mary Barnes. Mary is the CEO, president, and founder of Alzheimer's Community Care right here in South Florida in West Palm Beach for Palm Beach County, Martin, and St. Lucie counties. And thank you again, Mary, for being here. It's always a treat to have you.
Thank you.
So we're talking about all these wonderful programs that became possible from Alzheimer's Community Care getting started way back in 1986. So obviously all of these programs and all the people that are helping put it together, it costs some money. And I know that you're a nonprofit and you have people that donate and you have a lot of wonderful people that want to promote your services. However, you were talking about Tallahassee and how you were getting Tallahassee, the legislatures, on board with some of these programs that you were putting into place. So that leads me to ask you about Tallahassee and about advocacy on the state level. I think the last time that I saw you was actually a few months ago in February when we were on a bus going to Tallahassee for the ninth annual
trip.
advocacy trip.
Right.
So what is this trip about, and why did it get started, and why is it important?
Well, the legislation with the Silver Alert proved that everybody knew that they needed some type of mechanism to pull everybody together. So I always admired and always was supported throughout the years in legislation, and he valued us very in all his different positions in the legislature, was Ken Pruitt. When he was a legislator in the House, and he was a legislator in the Senate, and even when he was president of the Senate. He is a wonderful person. He's well respected. And so we started working together. And when he left the Senate, I approached him to help us be an advocate because I felt he knew so much about how bills work and how to make an impact. And so he became what we call a lobbyist.
Okay.
And so lobbyists are wonderful people. If they, I think, they have so much wealth of knowledge, but it needs, in our case, we were fortunate to have someone actually understand what we were doing and valued what we were doing and worked with us on doing it. So we went up, he came up with the suggestion, why don't we bring our caregivers to Tallahassee? Wow. What
Why?
an idea. Okay.
Why?
Well, because they're the ones that tell the story so much better than you and I. They have so much that they have given, and they have spent themselves in taking care of the person that they love, and they love telling their story. And our caregivers do want to keep their loved ones at home with them for as long as they can.
As long as possible.
As long as they can.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that understanding, when their loved ones die, they make, they pass on their journey, and now they're starting another journey. They love going to Tallahassee because they're talking about their experience and their loved one. They have pictures. Some bring their pictures. Some have other mementos, and talks about the challenges that they had and why they need the kind of help, the
And
specialized help.
what's the goal? What would be the end result of having caregivers come to Tallahassee to talk to senators and representatives about their story? Why do that?
Well, here's the funny thing that's happened. When we first started going up, yes, it was stories coming from the caregiver and talking about why it was important to get the specialized kind of care, like, for instance, the Silver Alert, why it works so much and how it changed the whole paradigm shift of how law enforcement helps families now. So that was a whole education process.
Right.
And so then we came up with the specialized Alzheimer's daycare license, which was another bar that was raised as far as identifying the care in the community. So but what was happening along with all that, the legislators started talking about their stories, talking about their constituents, talking about how someone in their family had just been diagnosed. Where do I go? What do I do?
Did that happen the first couple years, or did it take a while?
It took a little while. I would say the third year we started really noticing that there got to be more of a conversation. It wasn't just them talking. There was a lot more questions. And then there was a lot more response. So that whole relation, and then the legislators that were there the year before started knowing some of our caregivers, happy to see everybody, and there was like friendships, and there was and they knew exactly when they came walking into their office why they were there.
So they were there to tell their stories in the hopes that these legislators would vote for whatever bill or any kind of thing that you wanted to get passed.
Yep.
In Tallahassee. It's putting, a face to a piece of legislation.
It's exactly true.
Right?
It's exactly true. And the legislators, they are people too. They have families. They have grandparents. They have aunts and uncles. And hearing that word Alzheimer's or other neurocognitive disorders got to be a familiar ring. And also, they looked more closer at watching what's going on with the family. And then legislators, their own wives. There's been a legislator up there last year that lost his wife. She was young. Mm-hmm. She was in her 50s.
Wow.
And he had an experience all his own. And, of course, there were other legislators before him. So it got to be much more of a known issue. And as the identity of having funding that would go towards specialized care like the Alzheimer's Disease Initiative and about the specialized Alzheimer's daycare sites, and also looking at research, it all started making sense. I will humbly say, and I'm not bragging about this, please, I don't want it to sound like I am, But I think our caregivers and our trips have made a paradigm shift up there in Tallahassee. I really do. And it's got to do with those special people that go every year with us and that wants it. And you were a part of that. And you saw the miracle.
I
You
did.
saw how when we get on the bus, we call it a motor coach, we get on the motor coach, and then we have the microphone, and each one of our caregivers introduce and talk a little bit about themselves. Sometimes we cry because their stories are unbelievable, and we laugh. But by the time we get to that first stop that we eat and we break bread with for lunch, everybody's got their friends.
Yes.
It becomes part of, and they have their badge on. People come up to them in the restaurant and say, "Oh, what's this group all about? Where are you going?" "We're going to Tallahassee." They're so proud,
Yes.
and they're respected, and they have a voice. That's what that trip does too. It gives them a voice and gives them respect.
Yes, and I was so proud and happy to be part of the trip this year in February. And everybody's on the bus. There's like 40 of us,
Yes.
and most of them are family caregivers. There was some Alzheimer's community care staff and a few professionals. And it was such a wonderful experience.
Yes. We have
Yeah.
our board members come. We have a nurse always on the trip because you never know.
Yeah,
You never know.
But it was such a great experience, and especially for the ones, like you said, that come year after year after year, because they are passionate about sharing their story, because by them coming every year, they're starting to see over all these years that it does make a difference,
Right.
that people do remember them and say, "How are you doing now?" Because some of them are past caregivers and some of them are still current caregivers. And they're getting to say, "Well, now this is where I'm at," and share the progress of being a caregiver to, the people that represent us in Tallahassee. And it was amazing. And I saw tears, not just from caregivers who were sharing their stories, but from the people that were sitting in Tallahassee listening so intently and really cared. You could tell they care. They asked questions. And some of them said, "I had no idea."
Yes.
And a lot of them, we had a lot of new people in place this year in Tallahassee.
Yes,
A
they
lot
did.
of new positions, new Congress people, new
Legislators, yep.
new representatives.
Right.
And a lot of them had no idea because they're young. As we get older, everybody looks a lot younger, but they're young and they might not have an experience in their family or in their own community about Alzheimer's. And a lot of them blown away.
And our caregivers are not there with their hand out. They're giving. They're
Yes.
giving, and they're fighting for others that are not there. And that's what I think the legislators are starting to understand and respect. And doing that sends another message about, hey, our elderly in Florida are an unbelievable resource, number one. When we get to be the most fragile and vulnerable, which is when you get a neurocognitive disorder, our caregivers and patients, this is where we need to make sure that they're taken care of. There's $3 billion that comes into the state every month. And our elderly are the second or third economic engine for this state. And that money that $3 billion is called Social Security. And at the end of the day, the state does not spend one red penny expense-wise on our elderly. And not only that, they are generous when it comes to fundraising and giving to other charities. They're the most giving and caring generation that we have in our state. And when they get so sick and they're facing so many unknowns through this disease process, we owe it to them to give them the best. And that's what Alzheimer's, we're not talking anymore. We walk the walk every day.
That's right.
And that's what you're talking about too, is walking the walk.
Yep.
And we need more of that. It needs to be throughout the state, throughout the country. But they don't know what to do with us. When you're talking about accreditation, they don't know how to accredit us. When we do it the Joint Commission, we're accredited by the Joint Commission. They put us under behavioral health. We're not behavioral health. How do we change that? How do we get the medical community to be able to embrace and be able to help our families much more on their level and getting them the help? They are not lost causes, not at all.
And I know you're trying there too, and you've made some good inroads educating just primary care physicians, for
That's
goodness sakes, because it would seem obvious that they would know how to direct a caregiver or how to communicate maybe with someone who's their patient that has dementia,
Right.
but not necessarily so. So even physicians need the education that you are providing.
We still get patients and caregivers too late in the disease process. We want to get our patients earlier, and that's why we do this conference every year. And this year it's up at Palm Beach National, up there in PGA National, up there in Palm Beach Gardens, and
That's
it's
one
gonna
way
be,
that you get the word out, that
That's
you
right.
help out. And I've been a part of the conference for the
years,
last
yep.
17, 18 years. And, that's phenomenal in and of itself. So we're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're going to be giving away a free book, 36-Hour Day. So you want to stay with us and get that phone number.
I also
So
have another gift too.
You
that
have
I'm giving
another
you.
gift?
Yes, I will tell you about it.
Okay.
At the
Well,
conference.
we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live.
The inability to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's, particularly among the family members who care for them. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to us. We know. We understand. We can help. Arden Courts. Wandering is a common problem for people with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's also a problem for family members who care for them. Keeping them safe and secure means never letting your guard down. And even though deep down you know it's time, it hurts to have to ask for help. But it could hurt them even more if you didn't. We know. We understand. We can help. Arden Courts.
Dementia care expert on caregiversolutions.info. Call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
We're back, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our national sponsor, Arden Courts Memory Care Community. Arden Courts has about 50 communities throughout the United States and 10 of them right here in Florida. Arden Courts is a leader in memory care, providing care for those that are afflicted with some form of dementia. Also, they are a resource for you, the family caregiver, and as such, they provide all kinds of resources in their communities, and today they'd like to give this book to you just for watching the show. This is called The 36-Hour Day. It's a wonderful book, a wonderful resource for family caregivers. I would highly recommend that you get it if you don't have it, and you can get it today just by calling in. The number to call is 1-888-478-2410. Again, 888-478-2410. You can see it on your screen, or for those that are listening, that's the number to call in. Tell them you heard about this offer on the Caregiver Solution Info Show, and they'll get your name and your address and make sure that they mail a book directly to you. And later in the program, we're going to be having another special giveaway, and you'll want to stay with us to learn about that, because that'll be exciting as well. So get your book, and you'll be glad that you did. It's a great book. So my special guest today is the wonderful Mary Barnes from Alzheimer's Community Care, and she's the founder, CEO, and president of ACC, as we call it for short. And we're talking about advocacy. And why is advocacy so important, Mary?
Well, because it's the only way that we're going to be able to shift society into being able to understand, and at so many different levels, even in government, with law enforcement, with the medical community, the judicial community, and even in the health and human services community. And it is a challenge. There is no cure. We have nothing on the horizon, so we have to get better at doing the care. We have to be better at supporting our neighbors, being available in our other family members. And how do we give those tools? And remember, it's not just one culture. All cultures. There's no discrimination with this disease. Everybody's in financial status means nothing. And so how do we be able to help? How are we going to cope with all of that? So we all have to be on the same page. We have to all be there to understand and to value the different dynamics of what's going on, either with the families, many, many times, and too often to this day, that the caregiver, the father, the husband, will die first. If we don't get some sort of intervention, if we don't do that quick, get that help, you're going to lose the spouse.
But because of stress,
And
right?
stress, overwhelmed, they'll put their own health at risk. I can't go. I've got to cancel my doctor's appointment because of the fact that I'm afraid my wife is having a bad day. Nobody else can take care of her like I can. And we as professionals have to prove that we can.
Yes.
Because it is a disease process. And the whole evolution, when things are okay and there's no suspect of the disease, you don't need Alzheimer's community care. But when it does, then you need the help. And I have noticed there's a difference between men and women.
How so?
And
In
men
this
have a
respect, as far as
harder-
caregivers?
Men have a harder time reaching out and sort of rocking the boat when they think that something's going wrong.
They're a little more
Wait,
macho, right?
They're macho and they want to be Superman. And the next thing you know, they have a heart attack. The daughter comes in, didn't realize that mom had advanced because dad had hidden it or wanted not to bother anybody because everybody's got their own personal, hardships or challenges at a given point in time. And we come in there to help to balance that and to put like when you say when you're on the plane and you put the oxygen on the parent first before you put it on the child. That's what we do for the caregiver. We put that oxygen on them so they can do their job and fulfill what it is that they really are committed to and taking care, whatever that might be.
Yes, whatever it might be. And I think it's great for people to know that you do advocate for the caregiver because the caregiver obviously advocates for their loved one. They're the ones making sure that they get them to the doctor. They're making sure that they get them the right medications.
But they've got to go to the doctor too.
But they have to
and
too.
they've got to be willing. And we not got to. I shouldn't put it that way. But you need to know that you need help, and not to be afraid to reach out. And that's where we come in.
Well,
We are a nonprofit, so
that's something that caregivers sometimes aren't really good at is asking for help. And they wait too long and they're afraid or they feel guilty or they maybe feel that they don't want to let everybody know their private circumstances. But it is necessary. And when we said, well, we got to, well, you know what? Sometimes caregivers need to be pushed.
And when you're talking about advocacy again, even on the local level, every year we go to the county commissioners and we get a proclamation. And why do we do that? Because it's a form of highlighting how us as Alzheimer's organizations work together, and government does care. But we as the professionals and we as the caregivers have to have the voice to let them know what that means. And that's where when Florida, you've got to figure 10% of the national average lives here in Florida. And we have a high incident rate and a high population. And we have to make sure our streets are safe.
Yes.
We have to make sure that the hospital room or the emergency room or in the community where there's eating. I mean, we're doing a whole campaign with Alzheimer's Friendly, making in Alzheimer's Friendly. We're working with that with the department and working with the community as well. That's our
So people
job.
don't have to be afraid to take their loved one to a restaurant so that they can be part of the normal society so people will understand and have friendly places and places that are welcoming these caregivers and their loved ones.
The support that our organization has received from the community is really an expression of that they care.
Yeah.
And there's no stigma or there's no shame. And that is something we're still trying to overcome. How do we do that? I just think it's the advocacy and just having radio shows like this or communications like that you're having is making the conversation be, how shall I say, louder and giving a chance for other people to contribute.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just promoting the idea of having the conversation and
Right.
promoting the resources and talking about what you can do, because I obviously, go to stores like everybody else and I can see and pick out in an instant where there's a caregiver caring for someone who has dementia. But to the untrained person, it's not as obvious. And so these are things that people need to be more aware of so they can be more helpful and lend, whatever assistance that they can out there in the community. So I'm so grateful for you, for Alzheimer's Community Care, to be out there. So grateful for our representatives in Tallahassee for listening to the group. Have you heard back from some of the caregivers that went on the trip?
Oh, they sent letters, because everybody got their business cards. And so we sent all our teams, because we had 6 teams, and they all wrote letters to the legislators, and they got answers back and said, it was good to see you again, or they heard what they had to say. They appreciated the visit. I mean, and the caregivers and the families, they were so proud of being part of that movement. And they are approving budget items, the budget item for the Alzheimer's Disease Initiative dollars. It's a struggle because there's so many other challenges, but I do think
You have a lot of competition.
But I'm sorry, I am shameless when it comes to asking for money for our families, because I think they're deserving. They raised their children. They did not know how it all happened, that this disease affected someone they love, and that's why this support needs to be there.
And you've been successful in the past receiving the funding from the state, and you
Not
put
as
it
much
to,
as we should.
and not as much as you should,
But
I'm sure.
because we're part, what we've done, and not to jump in here, but we're not part of the problem. We're part of the solution.
Yes.
And what we are able to keep families living longer in the community safely and with security, preserving their well-being and welfare throughout the disease process, and always maintaining their dignity and integrity. Those are the 3 pillars of our organization.
That's your mission.
That is just plain, nothing more, not very fancy, but very sincere.
Yes, sincere. And your logo, you talked
Yes.
about how the organization got started, and your logo says it all too. It has
The
well,
two
you-
people.
the 2 people,
And the swish, which is the arm coming from our organization. And it's so easy to recognize. And people remember it. So between the ID locator services, everything that we can do under those 3 pillars, if that service or something we're doing doesn't fit into that, we don't do it. We don't do it.
Yeah.
But it's really been a work of love, actually, over the past years, and to watch us branching out and being able to help more and more people. And the way the response from our churches that we get partnerships with, it's just very, very humbling, but very, very emotional experience for me to watch. Even when we come back from Tallahassee and we have on the back on the bus, they say I talk all the way up. I don't really.
Well, I was up front with you, and I would say you took a few breaths and rest, so not always. But you know what? You have a lot to say, and you're good at what you say.
But
and
our board members step in too, and they do it as well. On the way back, remember how you and everybody else talked about their experience with the legislators, and that was another whole sense of pride.
It's an 8-hour trip, but it goes by so fast because you're talking and you're relating, and it was absolutely wonderful. We're going to take our last break, and when we come back, Mary's going to talk about the upcoming educational conference, and you should know about that because it's awesome, and she's got a special surprise with that too. So
That's
we'll
right.
be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teal, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
My guest today is Mary Barnes, CEO, president, and founder of Alzheimer's Community Care here in Palm Beach County, serving 3 counties. And we've been talking about advocacy. We've been talking about what needs to be done in the community to educate not only caregivers, but professionals. So speaking of education, I have given you now the floor to talk about the educational conference that's coming up.
The educational conference is a service that we do every year. It's not a fundraiser. Trust me, it's not a fundraiser. And we bring in national speakers as well as our own local speakers. And we also have breakout sessions during the day. Now, this is going to happen on May 29th, and it starts at 8:30 with a sit-down breakfast. And then in the morning, there's like 6 breakout sessions that people will go to. And then we've got a wonderful speaker, Governor Schreiber, Martin Schreiber, whose wife had Alzheimer's.
Oh, wow.
And he wrote a book, and he talks about his own personal experience. So that is big, to me, a very, very exciting time. Again, these kinds of presentations make it so that everybody has that conversation.
Yeah.
And in a dignified way.
Absolutely.
So that's why, and the professionals themselves that are there have a chance to ask some very important questions and learn as well.
Yeah.
From the human.
Well,
on the human condition.
I just have to tell everybody I've been involved with the educational conference for at least the last 18 years since I met you through Arden Courts and worked together with you on so many of these issues, and the speaking of talking about the relationship between the professionals, between the caregivers themselves, relationships between the caregivers and their family members. And now you're getting them all together in one huge room at a conference center. I mean, I've been in rooms where you've had 500 people or more together to have this conversation. It's amazing.
And then the breakout sessions with this year, of course, Dr. Galvin, who's the expert. And
you've had celebrities? You've
come.
had celebrities there?
And of course, Martin Schreiber is not exactly, he is a celebrity.
Yes.
He was a governor of Wisconsin. But also we have a gentleman named Ted Fisher. Now, Ted Fisher, we've learned about aerobic cats and dogs, and you've had our cats and dogs on here at the show.
Yep, they were right here,
barking and mewing and everything. And really, it really is a therapeutic process at so many levels.
So you're going to feature them also at the conference.
So Ted Fisher's going to be our speaker because he's the CEO. And how did this all get started? And where does he think it's going to go? What kind of research? We have had personal stories told us. We have a patient down in Boca. She loves the dog. She loves Astor. And so the family was so enchanted with how she took to that whole talking to him and brushing his hair. And, of course, he has a microphone in his throat, so he responds to her. He barks and he wags his tail and he shakes his head. And
looks and acts just like a real puppy.
So much. It doesn't jump all over the place.
It doesn't shed hair.
And doesn't shed hair. And there's nobody having to take him out or feed him or anything like that. And nobody's running after him because he's into trouble or anything. So we don't want anybody to fall and break a leg or whatever.
But it gives comfort.
It gives comfort.
Yes.
And so she had gotten so enamored with Astor. So the son decided he wanted one at home. Well, Saturdays and Sundays get to be a challenge for our families because guess who wants to go to either work or to go to the club or whatever it is
school, to
that
class.
helps, whatever it helps everyone.
And just for people that don't understand what we're talking about, when people come to
the center,
whatever
that center is to be to that person, we have our patients that work, and sometimes they ask for how are they getting paid, and so We just talk about, well, your time is priceless, but we have direct deposit. That's fine.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised when it comes to money. I'll tell you, our patients are pretty sharp.
They don't forget
They're
that you
pretty
get paid
sharp.
for a job.
That's
That's why
right.
some of them actually volunteer,
Yep,
right?
they do volunteer
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
But then this Sunday came, and Agnes got very, very upset. Why am I not going to work? Why am I here? Why aren't you taking me? I'm all dressed up. I feel I should be doing something. I want to go to work. So he pulled out Aster. And guess what? Changed the whole mood and changed the whole day for her.
I'm sure.
The anxiety went down. Whatever it takes to help that person not have an empty day, but preserve their dignity and integrity throughout that day is what it's all about.
That's right. She felt she had unconditional love with
That's
this
exactly
pet
true.
that she cared for, and somebody would respond to her. I've seen it myself, and it's
Yep.
just so
It's just-
heartwarming.
It's magical, really.
It is.
And to see because we never, ever, ever, as human beings, we are born with an insatiable need for relationships.
That's right.
And some people relate better to animals than they do to humans.
Right. So if someone wants to learn more about the conference coming up, again, tell everybody the date and the time and how they can register.
Again, it's right in Palm Beach Gardens. They can just go to alzcare.org. That's alzcare.org. Or you can call 561-683-2700. Now, here's the special gift I'm giving you today. If you call in or you register, you can go online, but you use the promotion code is called Marsha. Guess who's Marsha here? And just say Marsha, and guess what? You'll get an extra raffle ticket. Now, those raffle tickets are kind of precious.
Wow.
Because of the fact there's a 60-inch screen, television screen, smart screen, that is raffled off, and there's a few other tablets and a few other technology that's there as well. So it's kind of a fun event. It's at the end of the day because the conference only lasts for one day. But people are tired when they get through with this day.
They're learning, but they're socializing, and it's fun.
It's got all the ambiance.
It's a great event.
It's just, and people, when they're looking for information, they're able to talk to somebody behind a booth and to get more. Even if you're just trying to think about home health care, going into an assisted living, and talking about, and we have the law enforcement's going to be there with all their information, talking about the bracelets, the transmitters, and everybody in between.
Yes.
Anybody that does anything and everybody that has with retirement, you're going to have some financial counselors there. I mean, it's just a whole room.
So the attendees have access to all these vendors for free
true.
information.
That's exactly true.
And it's a wonderful event. I would highly encourage you, if you've never been to the Alzheimer's Community Care Educational Conference, do it this year. Don't put it off.
And we have a blend of nurses. We have a blend of students that are coming from such local institutions like Palm Beach Atlantic, like Palm Beach State, like FAU, and all the Kaiser. And we deal with all those universities. So a lot of their students and a lot of their staff and faculty. So it makes for a very interesting day. And you'd be surprised, rubbing elbows with these professionals as well. It really creates an environment that is very, very worthwhile for everyone.
Absolutely.
Now, at night, we do a physician's dinner, which is just physicians and for nurses, especially nurse practitioners. And we're having a very special speaker come there as well. We couldn't get him as early during the day but we might have him as a keynote speaker next year.
And the physician dinners just for physicians is
yep.
to what? To learn from their peers?
To educate the physicians on services that are available and that what families need, and to learn about them, to actually be there and listen to some very interesting speakers this year. We're getting somebody from the University of Kansas, and he's talking about how to quality of life and how to do exercise and how to keep yourself, how shall I say, cognitively healthy.
Yes.
And lifestyles and all of that. So he's very big in that area of the country. And so we're bringing him here as another piece of education.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yep.
So, again, it's May
29th.
29th.
Please write that down and try. And yes, there's a low cost for caregivers because we do have to pay for something for the
But
food.
it's absolutely worth whatever it is.
That's right.
And you'll find out.
It's very minimal.
It is. It's awesome.
Actually,
And
you eat through your day, throughout the day. Between breakfast, we have a break, and then you have lunch
And the
then
snacks and all that. It's well worth it. You're
and
right
everybody,
there.
and a lot of our vendors have all kinds of
Goodies and
Goodies and
giveaways.
stuff like giveaways.
It's so much fun, but it's so well worth it. It's so educational. Go to alscare.org, sign up for the 2019 Educational Conference today, or
Yes.
call 561-683-2700. And Mary, I want to thank you for being here
It's been
today.
a fast time.
It goes
always
by.
is.
It always goes by fast when we're together.
Yes.
I want to thank you all for joining
Thank
us
you.
today. You'll come back again. It's always great to talk with you. You have so much information to
Thank
share.
you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. And for all of you, call and get your free book, The 36-Hour Day.
And remember the promotion, Marcia?
Oh, yes.
For the
and when
conference.
You sign up for the conference,
right.
keyword is Marcia, and
Yep.
you get that extra free raffle ticket.
That's right.
You might win something big. So thank you again. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, give somebody a hug because they need it, and so do you. Bye for now.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teal. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions.
The opinions expressed on the